The Great Pyramid of Giza has always been a monument wrapped in mystery. But what if I told you that something hidden inside it has just been uncovered, something no human eyes have seen for thousands of years? Imagine standing before the towering limestone giant, a structure that has defied time, earthquakes, and centuries of human curiosity. People have crawled through its narrow passageways, mapped its chambers, and studied its construction, yet it still refuses to reveal all of its secrets. But now, archaeologists claim they have found something extraordinary. A hidden room sealed away since the pyramid's creation, a chamber that could rewrite history. The discovery began not with shovels or picks, but with technology. For years, scientists have suspected that the Great Pyramid holds more than the well-known King's Chamber, Queen's Chamber, and the Grand Gallery. Thermal scans once hinted at unusual voids, and radar imaging whispered about spaces where no space should exist. But suspicions are not proof. That all changed when a team, using advanced MON detection technology, the same particles raining from space every second, confirmed an anomaly deep within the structure. What they found was not just a hollow void or a crack in the stone, but a deliberately constructed room. And here is where the drama begins. No one knows what is inside. As news spread, the air around the pyramid grew heavy with speculation. Some archaeologists whispered of a hidden burial chamber, perhaps even the true resting place of Khufu, the pharaoh for whom the pyramid was built. Others believed it might be a secret storage room, sealed with treasures to protect them from tomb raiders. But there were also darker theories, the kind that ignite fear. What if this chamber was never meant to be opened? What if it held a curse, a dangerous secret left behind by ancient priests to protect the pyramid's mysteries for eternity? On the day the chamber was first detected, the research team gathered in silence. The desert sun burned down, but the sands around the pyramid seemed colder than ever. One scientist described it later as a heartbeat beneath stone, as if the pyramid itself was alive and had just revealed its pulse. The discovery sent shivers across the archaeological community. Some celebrated. Others hesitated, warning that history had shown again and again the dangers of rushing. After all, every great discovery inside Egyptian tombs came with stories of misfortune, strange illnesses, and unexplained deaths. Whether one believed in the so-called curse or not, the pattern was hard to ignore. The Egyptian authorities quickly stepped in, sealing off access to tourists while the investigation began. Armed guards stood around the base of the pyramid, and for the first time in decades, even scholars were restricted. Why? Because the implications of this discovery were enormous. If the hidden room held untouched artifacts, it could change everything we know about the Old Kingdom. If it contained papyrus scrolls or inscriptions, we might finally learn how the pyramid was truly built, one of the greatest unsolved mysteries of history. But if it contained something darker, something humanity was not meant to disturb, then perhaps some secrets were better left buried. And yet, curiosity is stronger than fear. One late evening, as the sky over Giza turned crimson and the shadow of the pyramid stretched across the desert, the team drilled the thinnest of holes into the chamber's limestone wall. They inserted a tiny camera, no wider than a pencil, hoping to catch the first glimpse of the unknown. What the lens revealed was nothing. Or at least, nothing they expected. The light beam showed a vast space, untouched, its walls smooth, its air still. For thousands of years, this room had existed in silence, and as the camera panned across, something glinted in the corner. Something metallic, reflecting the faint light. The feed cut out almost instantly, leaving only static. Some swore it was interference. Others claimed it was something far stranger, as if the pyramid itself did not want them to see. The mystery deepened, the questions multiplied, and the world's eyes turned once again to the Great Pyramid. What was in that hidden room? Why was it sealed? And most importantly, should it ever be opened? The silence after the camera feed died was unbearable. For a few seconds, the research tent outside the Great Pyramid was filled with nothing but the faint crackling of static. The team stared at the blank screen, each one of them frozen in disbelief. The camera had shown them something metallic, something glinting in the darkness of the hidden chamber. But then, without warning, the feed went dead. It was almost as if the pyramid itself had cut the connection, refusing to allow its secrets to be revealed so easily. Tension rose quickly. One of the younger archaeologists suggested that maybe the wire snapped or dust clogged the lens. But the senior scientist shook his head. No, that cut was deliberate. Something interfered. His words sent chills through the group. Could there be mechanisms still active inside, after all these centuries? Was the chamber more than just an empty room? Was it a trap? Word of the failed camera test spread fast. Egyptian officials grew uneasy, and the government placed tight restrictions on what could be shared with the press. To the outside world, they admitted only that a void had been confirmed, but inside the camp, whispers began to spread like fire. Some claimed the metallic object could be an artifact beyond imagination, something forged before recorded history. Others went darker, suggesting the possibility of alien technology, or worse, a forbidden device hidden away by priests who feared mankind's greed. And yet, despite the fear, curiosity refused to die. The team knew they had to try again. That night, the desert around the pyramid seemed different. The stars burned brighter, and the wind carried an unnatural chill. The guards at the base of the pyramid reported strange sounds, low vibrations, almost like a hum, emanating from the stones themselves. Skeptics dismissed it as shifting sand, but the guards swore it felt alive. By dawn, a decision had been made. They would cut a larger opening into the limestone block, just enough to insert better equipment and possibly even send in a small drone. The operation began at sunrise. The drills buzzed, sending vibrations through the ancient stone, each moment feeling like sacrilege. Tourists were cleared away, and the site was surrounded by security. The air grew tense with every inch that was drilled. Reporters tried to break through the barricades, demanding answers, but no information was allowed to slip out. It was as if the world was being kept deliberately in the dark about what the archaeologists had just uncovered. At last, the hole was ready. The team carefully slid in a new fiber optic camera, this one stronger and equipped with lights powerful enough to illuminate every corner of the hidden chamber. As the feed flickered to life, the world held its breath. Slowly, the chamber appeared on the screen. Dust floated like tiny stars in the beam of light. The walls were smooth, cut with precision, untouched by time. Then the camera moved forward, and there it was again, the metallic glint. But this time, they saw more. The object was long, sealed in what appeared to be a stone casing, with strange markings etched across its surface. The symbols were not hieroglyphics, at least not the kind known to scholars. They were sharper, more geometric, almost like a code. The chamber wasn't just empty space. It was hiding something deliberately placed there, something hidden with intent. The scientists erupted into debate. Some wanted to leave it untouched until the markings could be analyzed. Others insisted they should break through the casing and reveal what was inside. One of the older experts stood silently, his face pale. He muttered under his breath, "It was never meant to be found." His words went unnoticed by most, but for those who heard, a shiver ran down their spine. The tension became unbearable when the camera captured something else. Not far from the sealed object, the chamber floor had patterns, lines carved into the stone, forming a perfect square, with circles etched at the corners. It almost looked like a map or a mechanism. No one could explain it. One thing was clear: this was no ordinary storage room. This was something designed with purpose. Suddenly, the lights on the camera flickered, the screen dimmed, then brightened again. For just a moment, the chamber appeared darker, as if a shadow had passed through. Some swore they saw movement, a faint ripple in the dust. But that was impossible. The room had been sealed for thousands of years. No air, no life could have survived in there. Yet, the uneasy silence that followed made everyone doubt what they knew. The feed cut again, this time permanently. The equipment failed, and the chamber vanished back into secrecy. The team stood in stunned silence. The decision was clear now. They would have to open the chamber physically. But with each passing hour, a question grew heavier: were they unlocking knowledge, or unleashing something that was never meant to escape? The order came at midnight. Under the cover of silence, no press releases, no public announcements, the Egyptian authorities wanted the opening of the hidden chamber kept secret until they understood what was inside. A small group of experts was chosen, each sworn to silence, each knowing they were about to witness something that could change history forever. The Great Pyramid loomed above them like a sleeping giant, its shadow stretching endlessly across the desert as if warning them to stop. But curiosity drowned out fear. Humanity had waited too long to turn back now. By dawn, the team gathered at the north side of the pyramid, where the opening had been drilled. Floodlights cut through the early haze, casting an unnatural glow on the ancient stones. The hum of machinery echoed like an unholy hymn as drills began biting into the limestone with more force. Every second, chunks of rock fell away, exposing what had been hidden for over 4,000 years. The air grew heavier, colder, as if something was seeping from the cracks. The men drilling grew pale, sweat soaking their shirts despite the cool desert air. It was as though the pyramid itself resisted, fighting against the intrusion. Finally, with a deep groan, the wall gave way. A gust of stale air escaped, hissing like a dying breath. The stench was not of rot, but of something metallic, almost electric, like the tang of lightning after a storm. The workers recoiled, coughing, covering their faces. One whispered, "It's alive," though no one dared respond. The silence that followed was suffocating. Then came the moment they had all been waiting for. The chamber stood open, exposed to the world for the first time in millennia. The lead archaeologist, a woman known for her unshakable resolve, was the first to step forward. Armed with a lantern, she crouched, peering inside. The chamber stretched before her, larger than she had imagined, the ceiling arching like the inside of a cathedral. Dust hung in the air, sparkling in the light. And there, in the center of the room, lay the object they had glimpsed before. A long stone casing, sealed tight, with markings etched across its surface. But now, with their eyes upon it directly, the markings looked different. They shimmered faintly, as though reacting to the lantern's glow. The team followed cautiously. Their footsteps echoed unnaturally, bouncing around the chamber in whispers that sounded almost human. The floor's patterns, the etched square and circles, were more visible now, glowing faintly in the lantern's light. Some thought it was a trick of the dust. Others weren't so sure. The lead archaeologist reached out and brushed her fingers across the carvings. The stone was cold, unnaturally cold, colder than anything buried in desert heat had a right to be. Debates broke out. Should they open the stone casing immediately, or document everything first? Some argued for caution, urging patience. But others, driven by hunger for glory, demanded answers now. The argument escalated, echoing violently in the confined space, until a sudden sound silenced them all. A low rumble rolled through the chamber, deep and resonant, as though the pyramid itself had spoken. Dust shook loose from the ceiling, cascading like sand through an hourglass. The lantern flickered. The etchings on the casing glowed brighter, pulsing with faint light. The floor vibrated under their boots. And then, silence again. The team froze, hearts racing, breaths held. One of the workers muttered, "We shouldn't be here." Another clutched a religious pendant, whispering a prayer, but the leader steadied herself. "We came here for answers," she said, her voice trembling but firm. "And answers we will find." With that, she signaled for the casing to be examined. Crowbars and chisels scraped against ancient stone. Sparks flew as the workers tried to pry the seams apart. The glow intensified, almost alive, until finally crack. The casing split slightly, releasing another rush of cold air. This time, the air carried a sound. A faint hum, like distant chanting, like voices buried in stone. The team staggered back in horror. But the leader stepped closer, shining her lantern into the gap. What she saw made her blood run cold. Inside, nestled within the stone shell, was not a coffin, not treasure, not scrolls. It was something else entirely. A metallic object, smooth and flawless, unlike anything the ancient Egyptians had ever crafted. Its surface was black, reflective, and yet covered in symbols no one could read. The object pulsed faintly, as though it had a heartbeat of its own. Gasps filled the chamber. One scientist whispered what everyone was already thinking, but no one dared say, This isn't Egyptian." The words echoed in the cold silence, swallowed by the pyramid's ancient walls. For the first time, the team realized they might not just be digging into history. They might be opening a doorway to something far beyond human understanding. The chamber seemed to hold its breath. The metallic object, sleek and alien in design, pulsed faintly in the darkness, sending ripples of unease through the team. No one moved, no one spoke. The only sound was the faint, rhythmic hum that seemed to come from the object itself, like a mechanical heartbeat. The lead archaeologist tightened her grip on the lantern, her hands trembling despite her efforts to stay composed. "Document everything," she ordered, her voice barely above a whisper. But even as cameras were raised and sketches were drawn, no one could shake the feeling that they were trespassing into something forbidden. The symbols etched across the black surface seemed to shimmer, rearranging themselves when stared at too long, like a language shifting to avoid comprehension. Then it happened. One of the workers, overcome with excitement or perhaps madness, reached out and brushed his fingers against the object's surface. Instantly, the chamber shook. A blinding flash of blue light burst through the room, slamming everyone to the ground. The lantern shattered, plunging them into darkness. Screams echoed, footsteps scrambled, and the faint hum grew louder, vibrating through their very bones. When the emergency lights flickered on, the worker was gone, not injured, not unconscious, gone. His gloves lay on the floor, the fingertips scorched, but there was no trace of him. The object pulsed brighter now, its hum transforming into something more deliberate, like a chant, low and ancient, resonating from the stone itself. Panic erupted. Some shouted to leave immediately, others dropped their tools and fled toward the exit. But the leader stayed frozen, staring at the object, unable to move. It wasn't just a relic, it was active. Word reached the officials outside. Guards rushed in, ordering everyone to retreat. Yet the archaeologists argued fiercely, desperate to preserve what they had uncovered. The debate ended when the ground trembled beneath their feet. The carvings on the chamber floor glowed fiercely now, the etched square and circles blazing with unnatural light. Dust rained down as cracks split across the ceiling. The pyramid groaned as though alive, as though it resented what had been disturbed. Those who remained scrambled to drag equipment out, but the leaders stepped closer to the object, captivated. Her eyes widened as the symbols on its surface shifted into something she thought she recognized. Patterns that looked eerily similar to constellations in the night sky. Her lips moved without sound, whispering names of stars. How could an artifact buried thousands of years ago hold knowledge of constellations mapped only with modern telescopes? Suddenly, the object emitted a sharp tone, piercing and metallic, making ears bleed. Lights died instantly. The chamber fell into blackness so heavy it felt like drowning. People screamed as something moved within the dark. Shadows that shouldn't have been there, brushing past them, cold and deliberate. Hands reached out only to touch nothing. Yet the sense of being surrounded was undeniable, suffocating. Then, as suddenly as it began, the noise stopped. The chamber was silent again. The object glowed faintly calm, as though nothing had happened. The missing worker never returned. His absence hung in the air like a curse, proof that they had unleashed something beyond human control. The pyramid, bathed in the red light of sunset, stood taller than ever, silent, indifferent, as if mocking their intrusion. That night, rumors spread quickly. Some claimed the object was a weapon. Others whispered it was a vessel, waiting to awaken. A few dared to say it was a message left behind. Not by Khufu, not by Egyptians, but by something far older, far more powerful. The leader, sleepless and haunted, stared at the stars above the desert. She couldn't forget the shifting symbols, the constellations burned into her memory. They weren't random. They were coordinates, directions, a map, and if she was right, the Great Pyramid was never just a tomb. It was a marker, a beacon. And now, after 4,000 years of silence, the beacon had been lit. The discovery should have ended there. The authorities ordered the chamber sealed. Guards patrolled the site day and night, and official reports claimed the chamber contained no significant findings. But the truth could not be buried so easily. Too many had seen what lay inside. Too many had felt the hum, the impossible cold, the vanishing of a man into nothingness. And one person, more than all the others, could not let it go: the lead archaeologist. Night after night she replayed the moment in her mind. The glowing symbols, the vibrations under her feet, the fleeting constellations carved into that black metallic surface. It wasn't just an artifact. It was a message. She became consumed with the thought, her notes filled with sketches of stars, calculations of coordinates, attempts to decode the language. Sleep eluded her. Food lost its taste. All she saw everywhere were those shifting markings. Weeks later, under the cover of darkness, she returned to the pyramid alone. The guard station nearby had grown lazy. Months without incident had dulled their vigilance. Slipping past them, she carried only a lantern, her notes, and a desperate need for answers. The chamber's entrance was still covered by heavy stone blocks, but she knew of a narrow gap, just wide enough for a determined soul to squeeze through. With trembling hands, she slid inside. The chamber greeted her with silence, heavy and oppressive. Dust hung like mist in the lantern's glow, and there it was, the object, still pulsing faintly, waiting. For a moment, she felt paralyzed, as though the air itself resisted her presence. Then the hum began again, soft at first, rising slowly. The floor's carvings glowed faintly, as if recognizing her return. Her voice cracked as she whispered into the emptiness. "What are you?" The symbols on the object stirred, shifting, reshaping. Her breath caught in her throat as they arranged themselves into something unmistakable. A star map of the Orion constellation, perfectly aligned, each point glowing faintly. The Great Pyramid had always been thought to mirror Orion's belt. Now the connection was undeniable. But this wasn't just a reflection, it was a key. Compelled by forces she couldn't explain, she placed her hands on the surface. When light returned, it wasn't the lantern's glow. It was the object itself. And then, a voice, not spoken, not heard, but imprinted directly into her thoughts. "You were not meant to open this." Her heart pounded. The voice was not angry, but sorrowful, heavy with an ancient weight. "This world was given time. Your kind was not ready. Now the signal has been sent." She collapsed, gasping, as the light faded. The chamber returned to silence. The object pulsed faintly again, as if nothing had happened. But she knew everything had changed. Outside, the desert wind screamed against the stones. Days later, strange signals were detected across the globe. Radio telescopes in South America, Europe, and Asia all picked up the same repeating pattern, a sequence of pulses that matched the coordinates of Orion. Governments scrambled to cover it up. Scientists whispered of alien contact, and conspiracy theorists filled the airwaves with fear. But for her, there was only dread, because she knew the truth. The pyramid was never a tomb. It was never a monument to power. The Great Pyramid has stood for over 4,000 years, silent and immovable, a monument to human ambition and mystery. The archaeologists who entered that chamber sought answers. Instead, they found questions too vast and too terrifying to comprehend. For thousands of years, the sands of Egypt kept this secret buried. Some mysteries are not meant to be solved, and when we force them open, we may not like who or what comes answering.